here.
We've got two. Waiting on our good friend Shelby, and we are good to go. Excellent. I just had a few people email saying that they did not receive the link, so I just kind of sent that out. Thank you to everyone who has joined. I think we're at almost 80 right now, so hopefully if anyone's having technical difficulties, they will be able to jump on the line at some point. So first off, to everyone that's, I guess, as an attendee, thank you for joining. Really excited to have our first episode of Courtside Seats. There's a lot of awesome stuff going on across the country and internationally when it comes to coaching education. So we are just one small part of everything that's going on. So check out every other provincial sport organization and other organizations that are offering coaching clinics across the country. A lot, if not all, are for free. So we're just happy to be a part of that story, given the situation that everybody is going through right now. Hope everyone is doing well, and I guess we'll get started. I guess a few housekeeping items. There is a Q&A box. We have two, maybe one-ish questions in there right now. There is a chat. I know a few people have chimed in there, and the most important thing, because my mom is listening from another room, Liz, we cannot see you and we cannot hear you. And that goes for everyone that is an attendee. I always get nervous when I'm doing these things. Like, can people see what I'm doing? So feel free to get up and get food and stretch and all that good stuff, because we cannot see you, we cannot hear you. So we've got a few wonderful guests to start our first episode. So we've got Erin McAleenan, who's the head coach of York women's basketball. Katie Hamilton, she's okay. She's the head coach of Nipissing women's basketball. And Shelby, I always get your title wrong because I feel like it just changed recently. Are you the director of player advancement?
Basketball advancement, but close enough.
Advancement with our good friends, the Toronto Raptors, who are just hanging on to that championship for another year, maybe. Who knows? So thank you to the three of you for joining us. So we'll have 4 more on next week and then 3 more on after that. And really, I'm excited to have this because we were originally looking at putting something together that was for a lot of our female coaches and players that was scheduled for March. Obviously, that was canceled. So for me, this is a really important piece when we're talking about the development of women in our sport and what we can do with it. I know growing up, there was always a piece of like, can I have a career in this? Or do I have to go play basketball in Europe? Like, is that my only option? And if I don't do that, then what? So I'm really excited to have head coaches, assistant coaches, directors, officials, and a professional player on with us just to showcase that even though we are all tied to the East Coast, all of us being born here for the most part, except for, you know who, wearing basketball PEI. She's our honorary maritime guest, Katie. So everyone came from the East Coast and really chipped away at their careers. And I'm just excited that you all took the time to join us on this lovely Wednesday evening. It's no longer snowing here in Nova Scotia. Yay. So very first question, can each of you introduce yourselves? And I've been doing everything in alphabetical order. So Erin, like, give us a bit of your background and kind of how you got to where you are today.
All right. Thank you for having me. Super excited to be here. I just want to shout out that I am born and raised in Sussex, New Brunswick. So shout out to anyone from New Brunswick that might be on the call. I went to Acadia University, played basketball there for 4 years. And then I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do, but I got an opportunity to have a job at a private school in Port Hope, Ontario, where I was a teacher's assistant and started my coaching career, coaching high school girls and high school boys. Through my coaching there, I ended up getting involved in some Basketball Ontario coaching, and had a few opportunities with Canada Basketball, which I would just say kind of inspired me to pursue coaching on a more professional level. So after teaching for 6 years, I quit my job and moved across the country to Edmonton to take my master's in coaching at the University of Alberta. And I had the opportunity to be a full-time assistant coach really for 3 years there before I got my first head coaching job at the University of Lethbridge. And I was there for 3 years. And then now I've been the head coach at York for the last 5 years. Over that time, I would just say I've had the pleasure of coaching provincial teams as well as some national teams. And clearly I'm very passionate about basketball and love coaching.
Excellent. Katie, no pressure. Tell us what you've done. A little choppy. You're echoey and choppy. I don't know how you fix it. This is fascinating. This would happen to you. You keep chipping away at that and see what you can come up with. We're going to move on over to our friend Shelby, because you were fine at first.
Yeah.
That's so weird. She was fine earlier.
Yeah.
Hi, everybody. Shelby Weaver, Director of Basketball Advancement for the Toronto Raptors, proud Haligonian. I really hate that word. I don't know why. It just sounds weird, but still very proud East Coaster. I went to St. FX, went to Grammar, then St. FX, then moved to Toronto right when I graduated, hoping to pursue a career in sports, and ultimately started working on the business side for the first 4 years of my career at MLSE, so the parent company that owns the Raptors and the Leafs and TFC and the Scotiabank Arena and all that jazz. Basketball is obviously, I grew up playing basketball, which is how I know Tasia and a bunch of other people that I saw in the participants, which was really cool. Basketball's kind of always been it for me. I would say it was a sport that I played, but it was the culture that I grew up in. A lot of my friends, all of my friends were basketball people. So when I started working on the business side, which is what I thought I wanted to do, because as Tasia alluded to earlier, I think especially, 10 years ago or more than 10 years ago, when I was in high school and university out east, like you said, the options weren't there. And it wasn't the options weren't there, just you didn't know a lot about them. So, the sports business side was something I knew about and was something I was passionate about. But once I started actually doing that, I realized that, I had more of an interest of impacting winning and being more hands-on with the actual product and, what we were putting out on the court. And so I made the transition over to the basketball side 4 or 5 years ago now. I started by running our G League team, Raptors 905, from when it started for 2 years. That I moved over to the big team, was manager of player development for 2 seasons, and then now in my current role, which is some of the same stuff, just on a bit of a broader scale. So it's been a good journey. And I'm excited to hear the rest of your stories as well and chat a little bit more.
Yeah, awesome. Katie, would you like to try? Maybe log out and rejoin with the link and we'll just continue on. Or if you have a headset, I saw someone recommend that.
Log back in.
Sounds great.
Doesn't sound great, but sounds great.
You're right, it does not.
Exactly.
Poor thing. So I wrote the questions down. So we did kind of come up with 10 questions. Again, just being cautious of everyone's time. If we get to all 10, super. If we don't, then that's okay as well. Oh. Hello.
Cheers.
Give us a go.
Any luck?
Oh, welcome back. All right. How did you get to where you are?
I exited and then reloaded.
That's what I thought.
I'm born and raised in Sault Ste. Marie, Ontario. So small town in Northern Ontario, which now I guess Northern Ontario is home for me, proudly again. But made my way to PEI to play. I played 3 years there and then stopped playing after my 3rd season and got really, really lucky and stumbled upon an assistant coaching job at UPI. I was there for 3 seasons as an assistant and did some work with the provincial teams, then got even luckier. and got the chance to start a Sioux College program from scratch. So was a very young head coach at that point in time, but did that for 3 seasons. While I was there, I did a lot of work with Basketball Ontario and provincial team coaching, and was lucky enough to win a national championship and coach very talented young ladies. Then I moved my way back to Prince Edward Island, where I took on a bit more of a sport admin role. Tasia kind of knew me in that capacity, so took on the executive director and technical director role with Basketball Prince Edward Island. And when I was there, was lucky enough to be an assistant coach with Holland College as well. So real growth experience for me from an admin perspective with Basketball PEI, and really proud of some of the work we did there during that time. And then the Nipissing University head coaching job came up. And I was lucky enough to land the position here. So going into now my 4th season, my 4th season at Nipissing is coming up. So this is home now, but I'm a proud honorary Maritimer. Couldn't be more proud of my time in PEI and the people that are there.
That's right, Maritimes. How did you, I have to bring up a sensitive subject with your time at Holland College and the national championship game. I'm sure everyone wants
you had to bring it up early, eh?
I had to. You mentioned it with Basketball Ontario, so I thought I'd mention, just inquire.
Yeah, buzzer beater. It's a thing that if you're watching TSN Turning Points, you want to be on the opposite end than we were on, and you're like, wow, that's a really great shot. Unfortunately, we were at like the other end of it, and I had a perfect angle of that going up and like seeing the trajectory of it. I was like, oh God, that's going in. And it did. So I'm not over it yet. There's been a couple therapy bills, but we're working on it.
Excellent. That's good. So I had to ask. So I have my questions here. Obviously, you just gave us a bit of a synopsis on how you got to where you are today. Obviously, there's a lot more to each of you than just basketball. So I also like to just acknowledge the fact that, yeah, we all took a path to our basketball careers, but there were lots of other things that we did along the way to get us to where we are, which is great. So the big question that I feel like is really important to me, and I think is probably important to a lot of athletes when they stop playing, which is, how do you manage to, I guess, overcome the feeling that you had when you finished playing basketball. And I think that's something that I've been talking about for a long time, whether it was you graduated and you stopped playing, you had an injury, you were cut from a team, or at some point for all of us, we stopped playing. I did try to hold on to playing in like the Mount Spring League. I've since retired. So what advice would you have for anyone that's going through that, and kind of what experience did you have when you all finished? Feel free to jump in. Doesn't matter what order we go in.
I mean, I'll jump in. I feel like I'm the farthest away from my playing days. So I would say for me, first of all, I decided to end my career after 4 years at Acadia, and it was a pretty low time after that, which I don't think that leading up to it, I had ever thought about what I was going to feel when it was done. And yeah, I mean, I was definitely depressed and, missed basketball, and I didn't really know what to feel or do about it. I think just the routine, the social aspect of having, 12 people who you're super close with and spending a lot of time with, no real necessarily goals, especially obviously basketball wise, to work towards. It was just an abrupt stop. I would say advice is for coaches out there and also athletes, I think it's communicating with the athletes ahead of time to maybe just better prepare them mentally for what to expect. But then also I think it's really trying to think about who you are as a person. I think that for me personally, so much of my life, I mean, for 22 years, and maybe arguably more than that at this point, basketball was such a big part of who I was as a person. And so I think just trying to figure out who I was maybe outside of basketball I think continues to be a work in progress for me, likely. But I did then, probably 6 months after I finished my playing career, I did start my coaching career. And I think that gave me, it allowed me that, the passion that I have for the sport. It allowed me to continue to enjoy it, just trying to figure it out from a different lens or a different perspective.
Awesome.
Yeah, I really think it's probably one of the most under talked about aspects of a player's career, and something that, I mean, now I think I've been doing this as an assistant or head coach for I think 12 years now. So been able to see more and more athletes go through the process of retirement and ending their careers. And definitely one of the biggest like learning experiences for me to help guide them through that experience. I think I took it for granted in my own journey, because the second I stopped playing, I became a coach. So I never really stopped to pause to understand what life was like without basketball in it. And it is a drastic change for some athletes. So I think my advice to any athlete that I talk to now is to really try to find a passion and to explore different avenues to fulfill that passion. I think in your playing career, you're so fixated on an outcome and on one thing with that sport. And when your playing career is done, it's really the chance to spend that time, like Erin said, trying to navigate and learn, who you are without the sport involved as a player. And I think the main thing with that, just like as an athlete, is to understand that you're going to fail through that navigation. So you're going to run through some roadblocks of, I made a mistake, or this isn't for me, and this isn't what I want to pursue, and to not let that emotion overcome you and that negativity overcome you. It's just like your playing career, whether you were cut from a team, or you transition to a different sport, that's going to happen in real life as well. So to try to apply those things you learn through sport into that post-playing career, new career and environment.
Yeah, I think I had a bit of a different experience because my career ended a little sooner than I would have liked. I went to St. FX with the intention of playing basketball, and because of some health issues, I never even got the chance to be on the team and to play. Because coming into my first year in my summer, I was having some health issues that just wasn't going to allow me to play that season. So I went through it a lot earlier than I was. It's hard anytime you go through it, but I went through it a lot earlier than I was prepared for. And it was super hard. Like Erin said, like for so long in your life, as I was good in school, I did all these other things, but like at my core, I identified as a basketball player, like that's who I was. And it was such a huge part of my identity, and like letting that go was really, really hard for me. And it's like, I remember even for the first like year or two, like I couldn't even work out. Like I just had no motivation to work out. I'm like, why am I going to go for this run? Like for what? Like I'm not competing. Like I'm not training for anything. Like it was just such a weird time. The one thing that I'm sort of grateful for now is that it actually forced me to figure out who I was without basketball a lot earlier than I was prepared to do. And so by the time I got done with university, I was like ready to make that next jump and figure out what my next step was. In my job now, part of my job is preparing our players for life after basketball. And that actually looks different from if you're a rookie to if you're a veteran player. But a huge part of our programming and a huge part of the NBA's programming is exactly what you're talking about here, which is who are you without basketball? And what I would encourage every athlete to do, and every coach who's coaching athletes and leading athletes, is you just have more, even if you're just a college athlete, all the way up to NBA, you have so much more leverage as a player. And it sounds really bad, but when you're a basketball player, an elite basketball player in your community or at your college, people want to talk to you. They want to see what you know and what you have. So take advantage of that time while you're playing to connect with a lot of different people and really use those connections to explore things. What are you interested in? And the answer might just be basketball. Like, that's what it was for me. But, there's so many other avenues that you can explore, and using your time as a player when you're not sort of in that panic mode of what am I going to do is really, really important, and something that I always try to encourage our guys to do. But nothing prepares you fully for it, but there are things you can do leading up that's going to at least make you feel a little more prepared when that day finally does come. And for some of us, it's sooner than others.
And sometimes it's intentional, or other times it's unintentional, like you said, Shelby, you know, you weren't planning on not playing. So anyone else that's in university is, well, if we're playing U Sport, you kind of have 5 years in your head, and you just hope you don't get injured and hope you don't get cut, and you get to live out those 5 years. So I think it's interesting right now with hi Magic. Would you like to add anything? I think it's interesting right now with not being able to play basketball. I'm curious to know what our athletes are doing right now. I think it's very much a challenge when you are so programmed to go to practice, and then you have games, and you have your training, and now all of a sudden it's like, do I run outside? Like, do I hang out with my siblings? Do I spend time with my family? My mom, hello Liz, we puzzle every day. Like, it's extreme puzzling. I think we've finished 9, and some of them are like 2,000 pieces. It's like a puzzle board to do the puzzle on, to like put away so it's not taking over our house. So I never did puzzles, but right now you're kind of forced into a position of exploring, like Shelby said, like, what other things do I like doing in my spare time, and not just programmed to always think about basketball, because there are other things, you know, beyond our sport that we're all interested in, which is pretty neat. Here's one that I'm interested in. So for me, I would definitely say, like, when the WNBA began, that was like, okay, I could be a professional basketball player, knowing full well, realistic, I was not going to make the WNBA, but there was a little bit of knowing that we weren't just going to, I guess, stop after our university careers, that there was some upward momentum into what women could do in our sport. So what other things have you noticed other than the WNBA when it comes to women in our sport that has kind of opened up some doors for other people, whether it's you know, Shelby, I would think back that you probably wouldn't be exactly involved with the Toronto Raptors several years ago in the capacity that you are. So for me, that would be, you know, opening a door, and you know, you're looking at other women who are involved with NBA teams. And I'm just wondering if there's anything that you find folks have noticed that has kind of opened up the eyes to our young females who are looking at trying to find a career in basketball.
Yeah, I mean, I think just doing what we're doing now. When I first started in the AUS, I can remember that, I think back then, now I'm aging myself, but I think that 6 of the 8 head coaches were females at that point in time. And, you know, I can still remember, you know, that time period in my life, and really starting to aspire to wanting to be that, to be a head coach. So it was a tangible thing that I could see that was attainable for me as a young female to do. And that was sort of the start of me aspiring to want to do this as a career, and to know that it was possible. And then I think a lot of it also has to do with just the base environment in which, you know, you were brought up. And you know, I mean, I know Tasia and you, Erin, have very supportive male influences in your life that, you know, sort of gave you the hope and promise to go and do these things and to try to achieve them. So for me, it was a little bit of a different perspective, because I never felt like I couldn't, because I was a female. I was always told that I could. I was always brought up in an environment of, you know, kind of a no-fail zone. And you're just as good as the person next to you, no matter what the gender. So I think it's our job to sort of promote that lifestyle, promote that vision, and that environment to the young females that maybe do and don't have that upbringing. Magic agrees. Yeah.
So good. Yeah.
I think for me,
yeah.
Oh, sorry, Katie, go ahead. Or Erin, go ahead.
No, you go ahead, Shelby. It's all good.
I think for me, the crazy part now that I've, you know, I'm far enough removed, but I feel like it was recently enough that I can really remember like who I played against and who I played with, and also the guys that grew up in Nova Scotia. And now that like I'm in the gym every day with like NBA athleticism and NBA talent, and I'm also I've been lucky enough to be in the gym with some W girls and see them work out and play. And like, Tasia, I would actually like call you on that, because I actually think if you maybe had been like 10 years later, you could have made the W, because if you really
Dunking.
Yeah.
Throwing that down, Tasia.
when you look back now and I think of like all the people, like the talent and the athleticism and just like the way the game was played when we were coming up, we just lacked exposure, I think, and a knowledge of like what was out there. Like, you know, and there just wasn't, at the time, there wasn't really an avenue, especially for the girls. Like the guys maybe a little bit more, but you know, there just wasn't an avenue for that type of exposure and the pipelines. And, you know, we didn't even have, other than Thunder, like we didn't really have AAU. Like, you know, teams now in Canada are going down to the States every other weekend. Like there's just totally a different system now. And so I kind of believe that, you know, there were people that would have had the talent to get there, but it just wasn't the time. It was just a little early. But from a female standpoint, I think representation is obviously super important. It's history has shown that, you know, being able to see someone who looks like you in positions in the worlds that you want is really, really important. And I think we're getting there. You know, especially in the NBA. The NBA is probably one of the more progressive leagues when it comes to this type of thing. And then the Raptors, on top of that, we have the most women out of any NBA front office in the league. So we're even on another level of that. So I'm really lucky to work in an environment that, like Katie said, that doesn't restrict me. I don't have these sort of struggles within the walls of our organization, because, you know, it really is just this really diverse group of people, and not just from a gender perspective, but, you know, and in so many other different ways. But I really think it's important. This is so important. Like even just reading down this list, like there's a lot of people like, you know, Emma and Robin, like I didn't really know what they were up to, and to see like kind of everybody all spread out doing these amazing things. It's like all head coaches. Like these are not small jobs. These are not people who are, you know, hustling it out as a video coordinator. Like, you know, we have some pretty amazing women doing amazing things around the country, and you guys giving us a forum to come back and talk to each other and build relationships with each other, and then hopefully, you know, build relationships with some of the people that are on this panel is really crucial. And you know, we probably don't do it enough, but I think that's really, really important. Like you have to be able to connect with someone. You know, if someone wants to be, you know, a CIS head coach, who's a young 15-year-old girl, and she's like, I want to coach in the CIS. Like now you're looking at multiple female head coaches who are from and grew up where you grew up in the league. Like that's pretty cool. And so I think it just takes time too. Time is just really important.
Yeah, I agree. And I think just making note, like we did pull together 10 women, but obviously there's so many more. Like I know everyone that's on this panel is kind of outside of the East Coast involved in coaching, but you know, I'm thinking of the Jalen Skiers of the world, who I know is down at Acadia, and I had the chance to coach with her for a long time, and Anna Stamberger and Leah Martin, and again, it's not just people that are from the East Coast, it's across where there are, it's lots of women from other parts of the country that are doing some really great things. So I always think it's important to say, like, there aren't just 10 people that are doing good things. It just happened to be, you know, the connection that we made, and big props to Katie and Erin for kind of pointing me in some different directions and thinking of some people. So no, this is great. So this is a big one for you, Katie, because I know you had mentioned it when I sent the questions. What would you consider your biggest failure?
Oof. I think I had a lot of failures along the way, which I think has made it that much greater to get to where I am, and then hopefully to where I'll be, because this is really, I got to a goal and achieved a goal professionally, but it started a whole other journey of then striving to attain more within the position. But I think probably the most important thing that I could say from my time in trying to get here is I was told no a lot. like a lot. I think probably along the way, I may have lost count, but I think I had 13 U Sport head coaching interviews along the way. Actually interviewed for the position I currently have twice, didn't get it once and got it the second time, which is like a proud part of my story. And if I could translate a message to young athletes watching this, it's don't be too prideful and don't be so humble that you don't put yourself out there to try to achieve your dream. I could have easily, not tossed my name in the mix for this when it came up, because how dare they not hire me the first time around, you know what I mean? But I think I was well aware of maybe the weaknesses I had at that point in time and could justify, not being selected and knowing full well my vision and what I wanted to do, and knowing enough about myself to step forward and still want to do it. So it's very rare that in achieving, any goal that it's going to be smooth sailing in a straight line and you're going to get it in that first try. And I think it's probably one of the things that I notice most about kind of this generation is dealing with failure and dealing with setback and dealing with hearing no. It is a little bit of a weakness right now, and something that we need to learn that it's okay, it's going to happen, and how do you come back from it? So, I often talk about the number of times that I was told I wasn't good enough to do what I'm doing, because I think it made me able to do what I'm doing now. And I think that the biggest change in my mindset in probably achieving this and what I currently do is, for a while, I was driven on trying to prove people wrong. That would probably be my mantra, is that I was trying to prove all the people that told me no wrong. And eventually along the way kind of flipped my philosophy to, I have a lot of good people in my corner and a lot of people that are supporting me and thinking that I can achieve what I want to achieve. And I needed to start proving those people right rather than focusing on the negative and proving those people wrong. So that was kind of a big change in my overall life philosophy that kind of, I think, guided me on a better path to get where I am. So failure is a part of it, and failure is a good part of it. And I think more of us need to talk about our failures along the way to the people that we influence. It can't all be rainbows and butterflies. They need to hear that, we fell flat on our, I almost swore, but I didn't. Everybody, I know there's a pool out there that I'm going to swear. I'm not going to. So people need to know we fell flat on our bums and then got back up.
I almost made $100 there.
No, I didn't do it. I caught myself.
I would just build off of what Katie said. I think that for me anyway, I don't know if I would necessarily pinpoint one specific, failure as kind of being the biggest one. I think that growing up, I also learned that, I was only going to be able to be successful if I kept trying and put myself out there to kind of, I guess, maybe find those opportunities and take advantage of them. At the same time, I think I've been fortunate to have different opportunities. And I think that there was a time when maybe I felt like the opportunities were only being given because I was a female. And so I think that was then a challenge in itself, just maybe being in an environment that, again, it has been a bit more typically male dominated I think similar to what Katie said, I guess, right? Trying to listen to those who, really do believe in you and know that you can do it, instead of really just trying to prove those that are, saying that you're only getting opportunities because of being a female. But like Katie said, the only way that you're going to, learn or be able to be successful is that you have to put yourself out there. And if you're letting any of those failures kind of hold you back or think that you're any less than it's going to be harder for you to achieve anything, right? I mean, MJ, right? You miss 100% of the shots you don't take. Like, I hope everyone's watching The Last Dance.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I think for me, same thing. Like, I can't pinpoint some very specific ones because I've flopped at so many things, you guys. Like, I can't reiterate that enough. Like, there's so many things that I've failed at. There's so many, even just even when I was doing well or getting jobs, but then you get into those jobs and you have no idea what you're doing and you handle yourself totally wrong. Like I've just had so many of those moments where I look back and I kind of like cringe at myself, or, you know, a lot of moments where like I felt like I've been cut, or I mean, I don't want to put Basketball Nova Scotia on blast on this wonderful panel, but I've been cut from a few provincial teams in my day. And, you know, like all of those things sort of
I'll write that down.
Yeah, write that down. I'd like to take that up with someone. I feel like that's you, Tasia. So please stop my complaint. But I think that's the beauty of it, because to work in sports, and to be completely honest, to be a head coach, to work in the NBA, to do all these things that all of us are doing is really, really hard. It takes resilience. Like sports is very up and down. Every day you're riding the wave of like a win, a loss. You know, it's just, it's fun and it's amazing, but the highs are really high and the lows are really, really low. And you only can live through that and live and thrive through that if you've been through things in your life and you've been able to build up some level of resiliency. Because if not, you know, there's a lot of people that are like, how do you, because some days you'll win a game and then the next day everybody's in a great mood, and then you'll lose a game and the next day everybody's in the worst mood, and it just makes your job so much harder on certain days. And so I always like laugh. I'm like, if I don't want to do that anymore, then I should just go work at a bank, like 9 to 5. And there's nothing wrong with that, but it just, you have to be able to handle those highs and lows. And I think all the failures and, you know, all the successes are kind of what build you up to be able to live through that and ultimately thrive through that. So that for me is like I can't even count. If you ask me to count the amount of failures I've had, we'll probably be here for a few hours.
I think the thing that I guess picked up from what everyone's saying is you failed in your career, and I think that's important when, you know, there's a number of athletes that I know are tuned in listening to this, but there are going to be times where you don't make a team, or you don't get the playing time that you want, you don't play the position that you want, you don't get, you know, whatever it is that you want as a player is not always going to happen that way. And I think, you know, Katie was accurate in saying that we have to do a better job as coaches as well at trying to educate people through tryouts and through coaching positions, that when you are disappointed in something, if it doesn't go your way, how do I move on from that? And how can I approach the person and have a good conversation with them to learn and get better? And like, I applied for this position twice before I got it, and I was upset. Obviously, anyone that is trying to do something, you put your heart and soul into it, but at the same time, taking that time to reflect. I think I was like 24 when I first applied. Like, there was no way that I was ready for the position, and taking the time to go back on it and be like, yeah, I totally get it. Someone else was much better suited for it, but it was challenging. And I think you take those times that you had when you were an athlete, when you were disappointed, and how did you overcome it? And how did you find a different opportunity? You know, maybe I'm not the shooting guard and I'm better suited as a point guard, or maybe it's not my time this year and maybe next year I'll earn those minutes, or maybe this isn't the team that I fit with and maybe it's a different team. And I think that's one of the biggest things that we as coaches and leaders in sport can do a better job with in trying to help our athletes. And I certainly know that I've been guilty of not providing the right feedback or not giving enough information while I'm coaching, to all of a sudden reach the end of a year or the end of half of a season and, you know, have someone approach me saying, I don't understand why. And that in itself is, you know what, maybe I wasn't sharing enough information or having enough meetings with you to give you the tools that you needed to improve or to help you along your way. So I think there's an element of teaching our athletes how to fail, and also as coaches or leaders in sport, helping them along the way and helping them realize that failure happens with all of us, regardless of whether it's in sport or just in life in general. So I completely agree and acknowledge, like, there's so many failures. And I think there probably isn't one big one for me. There's a lot along the way, and some impact you and point you in a completely different direction. And ultimately we all end up kind of where we are and hopefully keep moving forward in our careers. There's a couple questions trickling in here. Couple basketball specific ones. Ooh, here's one. Shelby, right for you, my friend. What are your roles and responsibilities as director of basketball advancement?
Yeah, great question. So most of my role is basically, so when I started working on the NBA side, I was very much indoor player development. So very hands-on with our players and basically ensuring that all of our players were growing both on and off the basketball court. So it's a lot of one-on-one work with players, making sure they have the resources and support to excel in, areas that they're already excelling in, and also improve areas that, maybe they're struggling in or just want to improve. Through that, we've actually built a pretty extensive player development program that spans basically all of our departments, from on-court to off-court to medical, life after basketball. And I sort of came up to build that program. And so in my current role, essentially, it's more of an overarching strategy role of ensuring that as an organization, we're set up properly with like all the development programming that we need to succeed. So if you look at players like Pascal, Norman, Terrence Davis, like they're all been part of that program in some way, shape, or form as it's evolved over the last few years. So it's really, we have a very development focused organization. So it's really about making sure that we have everything in place and that we're executing that plan and sticking to the plan for every single player from the minute they come into the organization till when they no longer play for us. Yeah. And that involves like, a million different things on a day-to-day basis. Like my phone right now is like ringing off the hook. The play. It's just like, there's just like a multitude of different things that happen today, but it's a lot of work with one-on-one with our guys.
That's awesome.
It's a lot of fun.
Here's one. Any advice to keep players motivated when they miss a few shots? Keep shooting.
Keep shooting. I was gonna swear again and I didn't. I'm 2 for 2. Just keep shooting.
Hilarious.
I think so much about shooting, the more you become focused on the outcome or what's happened in the past, I mean, you have no control over that, right? I think that, I definitely encourage our players, sure, to reflect on, are they missing shots because they're taking bad shots, right? Are they off balance? Are they contested? Is it out of their range? But if they're taking good shots, like Katie said, keep shooting. I mean, percentages are going to balance out. I mean, unless you're really not a shooter, then maybe we'll have a one-on-one talk about that. But I think that, so many players can get caught up on past mistakes. And really all that's doing is negatively influencing what you actually do have control over. And that's anything that's happening now or, potentially going to happen. So yeah, next play, get a stop at the defensive end.
Yeah, I like your point there on like even educating on shot selection, because sometimes they think it's a good shot and it probably isn't. So you might need to, pull up some game tape to maybe get them to see it from a different perspective. Because a lot of times if you're in that moment, you might not recognize, who's matched up against you, where are my rebounders, all that good stuff. So I think film even from that perspective is super beneficial, so they can see like, this is how close the defender is, and here's where you were, and here was your footwork on the shot, and just helping them along that and educating them on range as well is huge. Oh. Yeah, this is a good one. Do you have any advice for when you have to cut a returning player? Right things to say, wrong things to say, etc.
I think it depends on the level that you're coaching at, and there's like such a wide variety of situations. I think no matter what level you're at, cutting an athlete is always the most difficult thing to do in the entire world. My first true player cut was Rachel McAleenan. She ended up playing 5 years for Laurentian. She's one of my favorite players in history. But I cut her from a North U14 team, and I can remember puking in the garbage can in Thomas Corey's office at Algoma right before I cut her. And I trained her every summer while she was at Laurentian. that was payback, but it didn't get easier as time went on, nor will it, nor should it. I had this conversation the other day that if it ever comes to a point in time where I'm not feeling awful or stressing or have those human emotions around cutting an athlete, then that's the time that I should probably get out of this business, because I've lost the human emotion that's attached to this. Our philosophy, my philosophy, I guess, with our program is that we always give athletes 2 years. I never dismiss an athlete from a program until at least the end of that second year, because I think that transition period is so important, and you're really very rarely getting a first year athlete that's ready. Like it's really a very rare thing to get a rookie that's ready to play at our level. So I think it's like so important to see what they do after that first off season, and then that second year when they're starting to get comfortable. And there's no easy way to do it other than being honest and upfront. And I do think it is a little bit of a rare thing that happens at our level for the most part. But it's never easy.
Yeah, it happens a lot, obviously, at our level. The one thing I would say that I think is super important, and it's exactly, Katie, like what you're getting at, is just because someone's not on your team anymore, it doesn't mean that you can't be a resource to them, or you can't care for them still, or give them advice, or help them find another route. I think, getting cut sucks, and cutting people sucks. Like there's no two ways about it. But what makes it easier for both people is, to, especially if you're the one having to do the cutting, like show investment in that player. Like they could maybe not be the right for your team, but maybe they're going to be a right fit for somewhere else, or maybe they could really benefit from your advice and your honesty and your feedback. Like that's really what all this is about, is like, how can we help, athletes and young people grow? And that's, for me, is we have lots of players that we've cut, but I've built really good relationships with. I'd still talk to every week. They don't play for us anymore. It's certainly not my job to have to worry about them anymore, but you build these really good relationships. Like never, like Katie said, like once you lose that human part, like it's just time to bow out, because ultimately we're all trying to develop young people and trying to get them to fulfill like a greater purpose in life, whether that be on your team or just in life in general. And so I think that's really important, is like, how can you connect with those people and continue to connect with them and be a resource and a mentor, even if they're not playing for your team.
Any thoughts, Erin?
I mean, I would agree. I like it when Katie gave the example of her story. I can remember for sure a couple tough cuts where, you don't feel good about it. It's not a great conversation. I think that, especially if it's a returning player, I'm going to make the assumption in my program anyway, we've had clear communication all along the way, that it's not, it may still feel out of the blue to the student athlete, but that we've, they've been a part of the program for a few years. There have been consistent updates in terms of their progress, and or lack of commitment. Again, I think it depends what the reason is, maybe why you're letting them go. But they're people first. And I would say in my experience, after you say that you're cutting them, most young women won't hear a lot. And so I think it's just important, like both Shelby and Katie have said, that, you care about them as a person. And so then you're trying to, provide that support for them, depending on what they're doing moving forward. But yeah, I mean, coaching provincial team in Ontario and even a bit in Alberta, I mean, we would have tryouts where we would have to cut in Ontario up to 100 players. Now that's not returning players, but I still think personally, having also been cut from Basketball New Brunswick via seeing a list on a wall somewhere.
Erin, we have the same.
Neil, I see you on here.
Erin, let's go.
No, but I personally value making sure that I have a one-on-one conversation with everyone that's, had the courage to show up and put themselves on the line to try out for a team. And I hope that they respect that.
Yeah, I think even with all of that, there's also trying to navigate that relationship after an athlete has been cut, because even though we as coaches are receptive to wanting to help them, there's still the part of the athlete that has to kind of mourn that process. So I think it's really important that when you have that conversation and you say like your door is always open, that you let the athlete come back to you, and when they do that, you know that they've accepted it and they know that kind of the place that you came from, although they aren't happy with it, there was reasoning behind it and rationale behind it, and that yes, you were a basketball player, but you're also a person. And if you already have that established relationship with the athlete, those conversations are really hard, but then I think they're more likely to come back because you've gotten to know them over however many years, and they know that you yourself are an open and honest person, and that they can trust you, and you'd be able to direct them in that process. But I think just making sure that we as coaches know, like, we're going to disappoint people, and, you know, let them go off and feel what they need to feel. And if they're open and willing, they'll come back for help that you've offered. Now, I did already ask all of our fine panelists. I did give us kind of an hour. I see it's 7:55. If we're comfortable with going for a couple more minutes, is that okay? Shelby, I know you're like, your phone is probably grand time there.
They'll live. They're not used to not being able to get a hold of me on like a second's notice.
Bring them into the call. Everyone would love it.
This is good training. This is where you gotta train them to be a little more independent.
Got one for you, Shelby.
Mm-hmm.
What degree did you take to prepare for your job with the Raptors?
I actually took a finance degree at St. FX, which is not at all related to what I'm doing now. So really good sell on the degree there. But I actually, when I moved to Toronto without a job, wanting to work in sports, much to, you know, my parents' dismay. But we cut a good deal that they would support me for a month, and then after that I would have to get a job to pay the bills. But what I did do is I registered for George Brown's Sport and Event Marketing program, and if I didn't get in to a job in that first month, then I was actually planning on going to take that program. There's so many great there wasn't a lot of like sports management programs when I was going to school, so I kind of just picked what I thought was practical, which was I liked business, but I thought finance was something that would be a lot harder to learn in the workforce. So that was my reasoning behind it. Seems maybe overly simple now that I really think about it, but there's so many great sport and event marketing programs or sport management programs, or even like you said, getting your master's in coaching, where you can actually get that real world experience, internships, speakers in the field that you're looking for. So if I was to do it now at this day and age, I would definitely, you know, take a program that was more applicable to that space, because I was interested in sports. It wasn't, I think it maybe Brock had it at the time,
yeah,
if I remember correctly, but I wanted, you know, I had looked at some Ontario schools and ultimately made a decision to stay in Nova Scotia for school. So it didn't feel like an option for me at the time. I didn't know a lot about it. So it's definitely a more favorable landscape for that now than it was when I went to school.
Someone wrote for Erin, but then didn't type the question. So feel free to fire that along again.
I do that all the time.
That's how I send emails.
Yeah.
Just, hey, then their name and send. No, it's fine. Just send it along, and absolutely happy to ask it. How do you deal with athletes who think they deserve more playing time?
I'll take a swing at that one.
Hopefully not.
First.
Yes. I think that in general, I would like to think that probably most of my team wants more playing time. You know, outside of, actually, to be honest, even the girls that get our most minutes in a game, you know, they don't want to come off the floor. And so I think that a couple things that I do is definitely, I'm pretty open with the whole team about depth chart and, you know, by position, but also kind of by player, so that everyone understands where they sit currently. And then I'm pretty specific with them individually in terms of, you know, strengths and areas of improvement, so that if they want to be able to move up in the depth chart, that they're going to have to do these specific things. I think that if it's athlete who thinks they deserve it, and you've maybe already explained those things and they're not understanding it, I will always say that video is your best friend. Video doesn't lie. If they don't play much in a game, and so maybe you don't have game film of them, I would film practices and I would just show them specifically, whether it's, maybe it's that they don't defend their position well enough, and so then I would show them specific examples of that in film, or if it's something at the offensive end, that they're not able to, create scoring opportunities, or again, whatever it is, your reasoning, because you always have a reason, then I would show them video and have that conversation. And ideally then it's up to them to put in the work to make those improvements with your guidance.
Yeah, I think one of the coolest things that, like Erin said, that we started doing this year, which I would say is a suggestion to really anyone at any level, I think is applicable, is to film practice. I think for me and the athletes was a really added bonus, something that we just implemented this year. And not everybody goes back and watches, the full 2-hour practice, but number one, like Erin said, for playing time purposes of maybe why am I not on the court and what am I not getting, you can go back to that film and watch, or as a, hey, I didn't understand what she was talking about today. It was totally in left field. I need a refresher here. I can go back and watch the practice film and learn that way. And I think for a lot of athletes, on top of everything that Erin said, it's a matter of patience. I think one of the hardest things moving on to the university level is that chances are everybody that's coming into our systems and programs played some kind of key role on the team that they just departed from. And so to understand the process of, you might be playing 5 to 10 minutes a game right now as a rookie, and yeah, the vision is still by your 4th and 5th year, you're that 32 minute a game kid that's going to play an important role in our program. But to have the patience to let that unfold and to learn as you go, I think is, something that needs to be really talked about with our young athletes, because they have come from a different environment of their last programs, chances are.
That's true. Here we go. Erin, what differences do you see in comparing U Sports student athletes to Canada basketball athletes?
That's a great question. I think, most recently last summer I coached, I was an assistant coach for the U19 Canada basketball team and U18 before that. And I've also worked with, was an assistant coach with our Pan Am Games team. I think that there are, of course, one of the players on our senior women's national team right now did come from a U Sports background, right? Maya Marie Langlois. I believe she's the only one. But I think that in general, the level of athlete typically at least for the senior team level, is definitely going to be a little bit higher, and when you look at where most of those athletes are going, they're going to top D1 schools. I think that the bigger differences that I notice in terms of maybe some of the more like non-basketball specific related things is definitely they're super self-driven and motivated, right? There's they are asking you, what do I need to do to get better? Can I watch film with you? Can you send me these clips? How did I do specifically in that ball screen read? Like, was that was that how I should have done it? But I think that they more so, and I'm only really speaking to the U Sports athletes that I've coached, but I think that the, Canada basketball level athletes are just a little bit more self-driven, and that's usually why they're at that level, especially as you get to the senior team
level. Do any of you have family, and or do you have any advice? Yeah, I see Magic was just in the picture there, Katie. That's family. Any of you have family or any advice that you would give to any woman that wants to have a family and a career in sport. I feel like I should have brought Leah Martin onto this one, because she's doing a fantastic job with her position with the Dow Tigers and having 2 kids that are always there. So the support in that program is pretty awesome. So next time I'll loop Leah into that one. But any advice? It is doable. Not that I'm speaking from experience, but I've seen a lot of women having that career and a family and balancing both. So any insight there?
I'm trying to manage my dog and a quarantine process right now. So no, and for those that are doing it, I say hats off. I message people all the time. You know, Krista comes to mind first off the top of my hat, that I message every Sunday and say, you know, enjoy the time with your kids and your husband, because it's an added layer of our profession that I really salute, and don't know how they do it, but they do it, and it's fantastic.
Yeah, I had very early on in my career, like before I was even, like in my early 20s, before I was even thinking about having kids, I had a lot of anxiety about this, of like, well, I want to have a family, but you know, I want to do this stuff. And for so long, like I really was like nervous that I wouldn't be able to do it all. But I think ultimately, and I know this isn't necessarily just a female focused chat, but I think it's important to raise, like, women were kind of built for this. Like women are built to juggle all of these things. Like I really believe that women have the capacity to do that, and you can achieve anything and everything that you want in your career, and also be like a really great mother, or, you know, not even so much mother, but like sister, daughter, friend. Like so much of this sports world is, it takes a lot of time, and you're away a lot, and you're on the road a lot. You're with your, you know, your team and your colleagues more than you're with your spouses and your parents and your sisters and your brothers. But ultimately, you know, I think we're equipped for that. And I think the ability of women to sort of handle that kind of, you know, juggling those kind of priorities is like top notch. And I really believe that we can do it all. And, you know, until someone convinces me otherwise.
I think finding even a support network as well. I was on the phone with one of my colleagues yesterday, just talking about her career, and she pretty much said like her daughter was basically an employee when she was growing up, in the sense that like her daughter went everywhere with her, and everyone knew like when she showed up, her daughter was there as well. So I thought that was really powerful, because she's in a very high position right now in her career. But like Shelby said, I think it's not just about having families and kids. There's also the element of finding ways to spend time with your mom, dad, aunt, uncle, grandmother, giving back to your community, your friends, and ultimately as you progress kind of through your career. And I think not just in sport, and I don't necessarily think just women as well, but you eventually find a group of people that are supportive of you, and they start to understand, like, I know for me in my inner circle, it's pretty much a given from, you know, almost year round now. Like Tasia's gone every weekend and almost every night to coach, and like when she strolls back in and, you know, her dog is asleep somewhere else, and you know, that just kind of is what it is. And eventually you just find people that are there to help you when you can't get home to take the dog out, or, you know, I can't make it to that because I'm gone away. And if you find the people that are supportive of you, the element of guilt goes away. And I think that was one of the hardest things for me, was trying to find the people that were not going to like hold it over my head that I wasn't there for them for something. But on the flip side, it's really important definitely for me, so I won't speak on behalf of everyone, it's like critical for me to find time to be with the people that are supportive of me. It's not fair for me to ask them to just give of themselves. It has to go 2 ways. So when you do have the time, and for me it's definitely right now, like take the time to be with those people and be in the moment with them. You know, if you can put your phone away for a minute or two when you're having that dinner or going out for a drink with your friend, just make sure that you have that, you're giving them their attention, because they've already given so much to you to go and do what you do.
You know what I think is really important that actually just kind of popped into my mind that I think is important just to say is like, you also have to be really critical of the work environment that you put yourself in, because as much as we're in an era where we, you know, a lot of this is about giving ourselves permission and like Tasia said, letting go of that guilt. You also have to acknowledge that there are going to be some work situations that aren't going to allow for that or aren't on the same page as you. And so it's really important that you put yourselves in positions or put yourself in situations that understands the importance of that. Like for us, like we have like weekend practices are free game for kids. So if we're practicing on the weekend, we've been away on the road, coaches, players, staff, anybody can bring their kids in. And it's wild in there. Like it's probably not the most productive practice environment. There's kids everywhere. And like the guys will bring the kids in and then they'll be on the court. So the kids are running rampant all over the facility. But that's important, right? Because we prioritize the fact that we're gone and your kids are important. So even if it, you know, makes the practice a little less serious, the benefits of that are just so, you know, so outweigh the cons that, and it's important to put, if that's something that's a priority for you, it's important to put yourself in a place where they also prioritize the same things, because, you know, it's too, like Tasia said, like it's such an important, for me especially, it's such an important part of my life balance and like feeling fulfilled and feeling like balanced and centered, that I couldn't work in an environment where that wasn't accepted and where that wasn't okay to, you know, do things with your family and you know, see your friends and have a life outside of basketball. So, you know, we're always going to probably work more than the normal job when you're working in basketball, but you want to be in a place where they allow that balance. I think that's really, really important.
I'm going to flip the same thing back to the athletes that I know are listening. I'm going to look you right in the eye. All of the people that are around you that support you, like your parents and your siblings that get in cars and go everywhere that you need to go for you to be an athlete, when you have time to be with them, be with them. And when you have time to go and support them when they go off and do their, I don't know, ballet or singing or whatever, you need to be there for them, because they sacrifice so much for you to pursue your sport. So, you know, for as much as we're talking about coaches being away all the time from our families and our friends, as young athletes, like acknowledge that, especially if you can't drive or you don't have a car, you're not getting there with the people around you helping you. So take the time to acknowledge them and be there for them when they're, I don't know, celebrating their 30th wedding anniversary. Like find the time to be there if you can. So I think that that's huge, and just always thinking about the bigger picture, you know, beyond just being basketball players or basketball coaches.
For sure.
Let's go with, I'm just scanning through. Shelby, what's it going to take to get a WNBA team to Toronto?
Man.
It's all on you.
So, you know, this is such an interesting topic because there was a lot of sort of media attention about it earlier this season. The real kicker with the whole thing is it's nothing to do with like Toronto and the appetite for the sport and ownership and anything like that. The W is actually really focused on strengthening the league that they have now. And if you watch Kathy Ilber, who's their commissioner, like all the messaging is not about expansion right now. It's really about strengthening the league that they have. The W has such great quarantine brain. My brain is so dead in quarantine. Momentum. The W has such great momentum right now. The new CBA, you know, the talent level it's always been amazing, but it's just only getting better. That I think they're really focusing on strengthening the league that they have now before they consider expansion. So as much as that makes me sad, I'm also excited because, you know, a strong W where they're making a lot of money and the girls are making money and the teams are making money is only going to allow for better expansion down the line. So would I love to see a team in Toronto? Yes, but I really want the W as it is now to lift up to the level that we all know it's at, and see them, you know, really take advantage of this amazing movement that we're seeing. Like everything about the W is just so dope. I can't say it enough. Like the girls and the personalities, you know, the level of talent, like it's just such a marketable league. And so to see them kind of take that to the next level is going to be really cool over the next few years. And, you know, hopefully we have a W team in Toronto somewhere down the line, but you know, I can't see it happening in the foreseeable future, but again, that's just my opinion.
Yeah, it would be awesome, obviously. But it's really cool to see how far it has come. Like I just watched Women of Troy on Crave the other night. Really recommending it if anybody can watch it. And that was like a big educational piece for me about like the start of the WNBA and who led that creation, and to see where they have come now. Like I know Kia was just on a panel chatting with our Sport Hall of Fame out here, I think last week. And so they're giving back and trying to build what we have in Canada. And I really, you know, hope that their games are broadcast more than what they are, so that our young females who are trying to watch game film and learn basketball are also learning it from their gender lens, which I think is critical. You know, when you're talking about the number of dribbles and the stride length and the ability to finish at the rim is obviously very different compared to our male counterparts. We'll say like 8:30 is the absolute shutdown time. Is that okay with everyone?
Yep.
Let's see. Oh, someone thanked us for the response. What other fun questions do I have here? All right. COVID-19, it's a thing. It's happening. It's impacting us. We'll go with positive changes. I think that's important. What positive changes do you think will come from the environment that we are living in? Obviously, it's not ideal now, but I know we're all kind of being forced to learn different things, like this Zoom meeting. Would have had no idea how to do it like in March. So that's something I'm taking away from it.
Go ahead, Katie.
I thought about this today, and obviously with definitely a sense of sensitivity around, you know, those negatively impacted by the situation, whether it be financially or health-wise. It's obviously, you know, a very less than ideal scenario, and my heart goes out to the people affected by it. But there also has been, I think, especially in the sporting world, some positives in the aspect that I think we're really in this grinded out environment, and that's kind of the message that we're sort of portraying in a sporting world on the daily, and not just, you know, at a quote unquote elite level, but, you know, I'm seeing it from U5, U6, U7, U Sport all the way through. And I think we've created a scenario where from coaches to admin to players, we're going 12 months a year. We're going 12 months a year hard, and it's an all-in, grind it out philosophy. And I think if we take some time to step back and reflect, this might be the first time that a lot of us in the sport world have had a chance to stop and breathe and reflect on ourselves as people and our programs. And so I think from an adult perspective, it's given me the chance to do that. So I can only imagine what it's like from an athlete perspective, no matter what age you are, to finally have that chance to let your body recover, to let your mind recover, and to sort of learn again how to play. Like I've seen kids outside playing, which I wasn't seeing.
No fouls.
And to learn how to navigate, you know, through that on your own, I think is obviously a change in training environment, but still a healthy training environment, especially at the grassroots and development level for these kids. So, you know, I obviously, depending on how long this goes and how long it's impacted for, but I see a lot of positives from the chance to take people, and, you know, unfortunately there's organizations that take a huge financial hit because of it, which from an admin standpoint I can understand, but from a development standpoint I think it's really healthy for some of these young people to kind of have a break away from the stress of sport and be away from it.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, I agree with what Katie said. I think that especially when I look at, kind of who we target in terms of recruits, those young women are playing basketball, year round, and definitely overall are playing way more games than they are practicing and improving their skills. And that's not their fault. It's the system that they're in. And they want more exposure and they want the opportunities, and that has been enveloped in playing more games. And so I think an opportunity to slow down. I think basketball specifically, an opportunity to work on fundamentals, right? Whether that's them working on it in their basement or in their driveway, or like Katie said, out doing even just different free play, maybe playing other sports, with those transferable skills. Just everyone being able to just kind of take a step back and slow down. I still think, I feel for the young women who maybe aren't getting the opportunities that it may be a timely time in their career, and they feel like they're missing out. But that's where, again, you have to look at that negative and turn it into a positive and say, okay, but I've got an opportunity. And if I really want to, still get that opportunity to play at post-secondary, in order to play professionally, whatever it is, then I need to invest in continuing to train and working on my fundamentals during this time.
Just reading a positive that came out of COVID pandemic is the amount of interactions our athletes, the amount of interactions that athletes have had with their children they've looked up to. And their 9-year-old son was glued to the screen while Kia was speaking, which I think is really cool.
Super cool.
Let's go with, we'll go with one more to wrap things up. Obviously, we all know that one shining moment just did not happen this year. So if each of you could give like one moment in your playing or coaching career that like you would cut out and insert into that video at the end of the NCAA tournament, what would it be? You can give multiple if you need to. Can't just have multiple shining moment. It's a new song.
I'll start it so Erin can think about it more on that. Honestly, I can still paint the exact picture of, replicate the whole scenario of the 1998 Ontario Summer Games in Guelph. And I think I was 12 or 13 maybe. But played for Team North, which if you know me, is like a huge aspect of my life and something that is one of the things I'm most proud to represent. And it was my first real experience with quote unquote elite environment at that point in time. And the whole opening ceremonies and the environment of it really kind of propelled my thinking at a young age of the excitement of that environment and the potential that you could have as an athlete, and how cool and exciting it was to meet all these different people that were playing and develop those friendships. So for me, I'm still good friends with most of the people that played on that team, and we laugh and joke that it was well over 20 years ago now. But still the impact that moment had in our personal and playing careers. So for me, I would paint that as sort of the pivotal moment in, I want to be involved more in this, and I want this environment, and I want to be that player and that person. And I can still remember the speakers and everything. So for me, that the 98 Ontario Summer Games was the rocket launcher of the old Katie Hamilton career. Follow that one.
Okay, well, I'm going to give an example from coaching. I don't want to get into all of the many highlights of my playing career. I think that for me, there are definitely a few, but the one that's the most recent that stands out to me is last year, which was my 4th year at York. So when I took over the program at York, I believe they had won 2 games the year before I got there, and 0 or 1 games the year before that. And I got hired late July. So we really had returning players and some walk-ons. And we only won 3 games in my first year, and we didn't make playoffs. And then we did improve every year after that, and we made playoffs in my second, third, and fourth year. And in my fourth year, I had a group of young women who, in general, had probably lost a lot more than they had won at the university level. And I think that at times that can be a challenging mindset to overcome. I love being the underdog, being from a small town for sure. I'm used to it. But I think that, really kind of just getting yourself in that mindset of understanding how to win, it's hard to learn, and so we made the playoffs, but we were on the road to face Queens, who we had lost to in league play twice that year already. And we went there, and it was a great, super close game. And down the stretch, one of our 5th-year players hit a huge 3. And I still can just remember, the girls are coming into the timeout. And I remember I got a text after the game from a couple coaches and friends who had been watching. They're like, why do you look so calm going into this timeout? The game's on the line. And I just think, again, we ended up, of course, winning the game. So we beat Queens on the road. And just the excitement that my girls had, I think just accomplishing something that they really didn't feel probably for so long that they were capable of. And I feel like it really kind of took the monkey off their back of us having lost in playoffs for a few years in a row. And of course, not having made it before that. But yeah, just so happy for them to finally have that feeling almost of belonging, in that upper echelon of group of teams who are able to have success at the university level.
Oh man, I feel like I have a few, and like some that people probably don't think are that important, but to me were important, and then some that maybe the whole country thinks are important. But when I was in the G League in our second year, we won the championship, and so that was, I was lucky. Once Tasia got out of the high school league, I was able to win a high school championship, which was really great. But that G League championship to me was super important and just really influential to me, because we had started that team from scratch the year prior, and expansion teams just never win. That's just kind of a fact of a lot of different leagues. So to kind of be able to turn it around, and I was so heavily involved with that team. I was the first one that got hired. I was helped get it started. I just put so much blood, sweat, and tears into that thing. And then to ultimately win was just an unbelievable feeling. And so that G League ring up there is, maybe not valuable to a lot of people, was really important to me. That would definitely be one of them. And then obviously the NBA championship last season was pretty amazing. And again, like you said, any winning at that, whether it's what Katie's talking about, Erin is talking about, you put so much into it. And it sounds bad, but there's only one winner in every game, and there's only one championship every season. And being able to do that early in my career, and kind of, like you said, get that monkey off your back. There's people that work in the NBA for 20, 30 years and never win a championship, or don't win one until so much later. So to be able to say, that, to be able to experience that, and also just know what winning culture feels like, I feel like it's going to be something I'm going to be able to take with me no matter where I end up. So those are probably, 2 of mine. Someone just DM'd me, or not DM'd, sorry guys, that's very, very millennial of me. Someone just sent me a message and asked if they could see my ring.
And?
Your X ring or your championship ring?
You guys, my ring is right here. My G League one's back there. I have my NBA one. Let me grab it.
I'm gonna call my mom out, who I know you can hear me from wherever you are in this house. Very proper in her question. She's convinced that because there might not be any more NBA and no one can win a championship, that the Raptors deserve back-to-back titles. So she wants
my
to know
goodness.
That's what
that's some bling.
For context. I don't know if you guys
There you go.
Awesome.
Not too shabby.
Yo, shout out to Tasia's mom. She's still one of my favorite people.
She's all right. She's all right. Honestly, if I told her to come and join, she would. She'd pop her head and be like, "Hi, everyone."
For sure she would.
So yeah.
My mom.
Mom, if you want to come say hi before they disappear. You can come say hi.
I would love to say hi to your mom.
Can I just give a shout out to my dad, who I'm pretty sure is logged in listening to this? Dad, appreciate the support from day one.
Hi, Dad.
Oh, Liz is asleep somewhere. Who knows? I'm sure she's probably like, where do I go? Anyways, I'm trying to figure out for the longest time, like, why everything was getting dark around me and not around you. And I realized that I'm an hour ahead. So I'm trying to like shine another light here. Not going well. For future reference, I need more light in here. But that's it. I know there's some other questions in here. There's a couple people that are thanking you guys, our panelists, for jumping on here and doing this. I know we went for an hour and a half, but I appreciate all of the time that you took and all the time the attendees took. I know I think only 6 people disappeared since around the 8 o'clock mark. So everyone was interested in what you had to say. And I know we weren't into like the nitty gritty of like, what offenses and defense do you run in certain scenarios? But I also think it's important to just recognize, like, someone said hi to Tasia's mom. Hi, Mom. He says hi. It's hilarious. Just recognizing that basketball and sport in general isn't always about the X's and O's. There's a whole bunch of other things that go to it. And for anyone that hasn't coached, I think it's really important to note that we're working with people and people first, and you can't get them to do the X's and O's of things without taking the time to get to know them and value them as people. It just won't happen. Everyone's saying hi to Mom. Why is she so popular?
Mom is a staple in the Nova Scotia basketball community. That is a fact.
She did win a championship with St. Mary's way back in the day, but anyway, that's it.
Thank you.
She's here.
Oh, she's here.
Hey, everyone. This is everybody. Hey.
Way to go, guys. Did a great job.
Thank you.
I want to say on behalf of all of us, thank you for setting this up. This has like been such a cool way for me to reconnect with so many people I haven't talked to in years, and also like meet all of you. And I'm excited for the next 2 too. So I appreciate you. You know, this stuff is never easy to pull together. So we appreciate you.
No, thank you for jumping on and getting involved. And, you know, I try to give as many answers as possible, but I know that there's so many different perspectives from us searching for our careers. So I really appreciate you all taking the time, and I hope that you can tune into the ones in the future. I know we have 2 more planned for now, but hopefully there's some more.
For sure.
Awesome.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Tasia.
Yeah.
Thanks, everybody.
Peace.
Bye, Magic.
He's like sleeping. He's crazy every other night. Now he's like sleeping.
Yeah. That's because he didn't have to go on that walk.
yeah, I know. Bye, guys.
Yeah.
Bye, guys. Stay well.
Bye.